So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where the USA and Russia go to war. Now I have already done this video technically, but I'm going to be redoing it since I have gathered more knowledge about the two countries, global alliances and relationships and stuff like that. So with this new knowledge, I'll be recreating the situation and making it more realistic, if you will. And there's going to be some factors taken into account, such as NATO not being allowed to be activated and China not being on the side of Russia. But those are just the two main factors for this video. So Russia and the United States will be going to war. There will be no nuclear bombs involved because that typically ruins the scenarios. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. That really helps me out and tells me that you guys are supporting these videos. It lets me know what I should post on YouTube, what kind of area I should focus on, if it should be like broader topics like World War III, or more focused topics such as the Korean War, stuff like that. So subscribing, liking the video really lets me know what you guys want to see and what I should post. So anyway, let's go ahead and get right into the scenario. Now my previous USA versus Russia video was kind of at the beginning of my mapping career, so I was still getting into it and kind of figuring stuff out. Now, obviously, I'm a lot more experienced in it, so I can make these scenarios a little bit more realistic, although that usually isn't really the goal. Now, how will this war actually start? I'm not too sure. It could technically evolve out of Ukraine, but that would kind of lead NATO into the war, so it's going to have to happen a different way. So let's start it like this. Let's go ahead and say that Putin was assassinated and the Russian government is putting the blame on the United States. The USA denies all allegations, although there was some evidence that the USA could have done it. Therefore, we have the Russian Federation declaring war on the United States of America. Now, this would provoke NATO. And like I said in the beginning, I will not be bringing NATO into this war. So we're going to kind of assume that NATO has been dissolved in some sort of way. But just knowing that if this were to happen in real life, NATO would respond and Russia would get, screwed over. So anyway, with the United States at war with Russia, and then of course Russia being the aggressor, we have the USA's closest allies getting involved. So Canada, the UK, and France all declare war on Russia in favor of the United States. So now we have three world powers involved, the United States, the UK, and France. So here we have four world powers in a war, three on the side of the USA, and then of course Russia. So this will be an interesting war. It will be a bloody conflict, and it's going to be an interesting one. This is the first global world war since World War II. Obviously, there's not a World War III yet. So it's modern, and it's going to be interesting. Nuclear bombs putting aside, those will not be used. And we have our first broad modern conflict, as I said. So anyway, with this development, we have the navies of these countries getting involved and mostly pushing over towards the Black Sea. Now, Turkey is a NATO member, but like I said, NATO has kind of been put aside in this video. They are still more of a US ally than they are a Russian ally. So they let US ships into the Straits of Turkey and into the Black Sea. So for now, we're looking at naval power that looks like this. We have Russia having almost complete majority control over the Black Sea, other than Turkey, who has let the US into these areas. And then, of course, we have the US allies of Bulgaria and Romania offering their coasts to the USA. And then moving on up north, we have the Baltic Sea, which is surrounded by US allies. And then we have Russia controlling this strait right here. And then Kaliningrad, I'm not really sure how this would work, but I'm assuming Russia would have some naval, it would definitely have naval province here. This is like Russia's only warm water port, so they would definitely have more navy here. But yeah, we're looking at naval areas that look like this. Air Force, I usually don't go into because that's kind of weird to map out. Eventually, though, we do have Russia calling some allies into the war. So we have Belarus, which is Russia's #1 ally, and pretty much their only ally, if I'm being honest. And then, of course, we have Iran, who, typically is just grouped with Russia for simplicity reasons. Iran loves the Russian government, hates the USA government, so why not take it upon themselves to join the war on the side of the Russians? Other Russian allies include Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and Central Asia, but these countries really wouldn't contribute much to this war, so I'm going to be leaving them out just because what would they do, what would they gain, and obviously they would lose a lot. We also have Armenia, who probably wouldn't join the war just because, they're surrounded by US allies, Turkey, sort of Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Then over here we have Serbia, wouldn't join, they are completely surrounded by US allies. There's literally every country that borders Serbia is a US ally. So yeah, we are looking at this, and for now, this is what it's going to look like. But let's go ahead and just speed up time and kind of get more countries involved so we can actually have some fighting. Now, Ukraine, I'm not really sure how this would go out with the whole invasion thing, but let's just go ahead and assume that Russia fully occupies Ukraine in this timeline. This would be a pretty big step for Russia because they have control over all these Eastern European lands, and would really give them a bigger front against NATO if that were to exist, and eventually the United States when they get other countries involved. And speaking of said countries, we actually have Poland joining this war. And this is simply because the Polish government does not like the Russian government. And Poland has been building up their military recently, so they are definitely a force to be reckoned with. And they're going to go ahead and join this war on the side of the USA in order to combat Russia. We also have Germany joining, another major US ally, and then I don't really see any other countries at this point getting involved. So with this, we actually have Russia prepared for this invasion, and we have Russian troops pushing across the Belarusian and Ukrainian borders and down from Kaliningrad. Now, Poland was ready for this war, but we do have to factor the fact that Russia has a ginormous army, just like the USA, about 1 million personnel each. With this taken into account for, and Poland's lower number of personnel, we can assume that the Russians would make some sort of progress into Poland. It would not be going as smoothly as Ukraine, if you would even call that smooth, because they are struggling very clearly. Logistics-wise, I think this is a full-scale war, so they would be, more logical about it. And supply-wise, they would be fine. Belarus, Ukraine, you can just move things to there. Although Ukrainian supply lines would be in danger of being sabotaged, obviously, because Ukraine has not been fully annexed at this point. So overall, Russia would have sort of a easy time at first. Not really. The Polish army is a strong army. Eventually, they would be pushed back by, obviously, the Western powers. But for now, they are pushing into Poland, and they are seeing success in doing so. So Russian troops blitz through Poland and push towards Warsaw. Now, would they actually be able to blitz through Poland like this? Most likely not. We are talking about the United States. And then, of course, we're talking about France, Germany, and Poland. All have big armies. Other than Germany. The UK would be a better word for Germany. So those 4 countries have big armies, and then Russia obviously also has a huge army. So when factoring all this together, the blue team would have the advantage, and the red team would have the disadvantage as they are invading these countries. But taking a look back and looking into a global perspective, I think that the majority of the world would denounce Russia here. They attacked the United States, and then of course the United States has tons of allies all throughout the world, in the Americas, in Europe, in Southern Asia. Now, the U.S. Navy is the largest navy in the world, so it's safe to say that they would be able to push back the Russian Navy. Now, the second largest navy also goes to the United States, because if you were to recommission all museum ships, you would also have the second largest navy in the world. So the USA is kind of good in the seas. So the USA can gain complete control over the Black Sea and also pushing back the Russian Navy up towards Kaliningrad. We have US forces taking over the Gulf of Finland, while down south in Poland we have troops pushing up and pushing back the Russians. We do have lots of stalemates on the border of Kaliningrad, as this is a heavily fortified area, tons of Russian troops there, and it would be very hard to invade. But over in eastern Poland, we do have the US Army and European armies pushing back Russia. They eventually cross over into Ukraine and up north into Belarus. In the Middle East, we have a separate US campaign that is to take over Iran, so we have US forces landing in the south of Iran and pushing up into the Persian region. Now, conventional warfare in modern times is a little bit different than what used to be. Obviously, as we're seeing with Ukraine, Russia is just mainly pushing towards cities and capturing them. Now, since the USA is a superior force over the Iranian force, we have the USA doing a similar tactic as we are seeing in Ukraine. Basically, US forces are just pushing out and cutting off large areas, all overall pushing towards the Iranian capital of Tehran. Now, introducing a new factor into my war scenario videos, we have support countries. Now, actually, I'm going to take that back. It's not a completely new thing. I used to do it, but it's got its own color now. So, in this kind of turquoise color, we have US support countries. As of now, this includes Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and over in Europe, we also have some support countries such as Bulgaria and Romania, Italy, Portugal and Spain, Norway, and the Baltic countries. Now, once again, assuming that NATO isn't really a thing or is somehow not active as it is in real life, I don't really know how to explain it, but just assuming that NATO kind of exists but also doesn't, we have these main NATO countries supporting the United States. Now, in support of Russia, we do have some countries, and they're going to be represented by this darkish kind of brown color. We have China, of course, Mongolia, North Korea, Central Asia, and Armenia. Over in America, we also have Venezuela and Cuba. Now, with support countries being acknowledged, this would kind of set off a chain of events of countries supporting the country because their enemies are supporting the other. And this could evolve into a World War III if you wouldn't consider this already. So Colombia becomes a support country, Israel becomes a support country, as well as Oman and South Korea. Now, in another turn of events, we actually have Japan declaring war on Russia, kind of ignoring their constitution, and they're joining with US forces in order to open up another front in eastern Russia. Now, taking such a thing into account, we have the US Pacific Fleet over here in Japan, who is holding down the areas around Japan and, of course, defending off against the Russian Navy. Now, I'm not really sure about the iciness in this area. This could be taking place in the summer, could be taking place in the winter, probably both, assuming that this would take years. I'm not really going to factor in the environment. That's just extra unnecessary steps. This is just a broad kind of thing over the Navy, nothing serious like that. Anyway, we have the US Pacific Fleet pushing back the Russian Navy over here in the east. And eventually, we have the USA and Japan achieving naval superiority over this region. With this, we have American and Japanese troops making a landing in southern Russia. And from here, they kind of just blitz through and invade up towards Siberia. After a campaign into northern Russia, we eventually have the forces stopping as it is getting kind of impossible to invade this area. We have a few US landings over here on this peninsula, but other than that, the US and Japan really just kind of hold their grounds. Knowing this, Russia doesn't really send any more forces over here and mainly starts to focus on their Eastern European front. Back down in Iran, we have US forces pushing out and capturing over their encircled areas. From here, their push up towards Tehran is expanded, and eventually they push up and capture the city, which leads to an even greater collapse of Iran and eventually the surrender of the country. Over in Belarus, we see blue teams push out and capture Minsk, and down south, we see the blue team push into Ukraine. Eventually, we have troops pushing in and capturing Kaliningrad, which lets the US Atlantic Fleet take over the areas surrounding it. Continuing on, we have blue team forces pushing back into Ukraine. The capital of Kyiv is captured, and overall, a liberation front is created in Ukraine, which leads to the full liberation of the country. From here, it goes pretty similar to my other videos. We have blue team forces pushing into Russia. Some naval landings are made off the Black Sea, which allows for a pretty quick annexation of southern Russia. Up north, we see another landing made towards St. Petersburg, which captures the city, and eventually we have the entire front connected. So Russia is obviously, not in favor of this war. Taking a look at real statistics, you can even go to Global Firepower, that website. I use it a lot. The USA is ranked number 1, Russia number 2, China number 3. And comparing Russia to the USA alone, the USA has the upper advantage. Amount of nukes never matters. I do see some people bring it up in the comments a lot, like, well, Russia has more nukes. Nuclear bombs don't matter. A nuclear war between the USA and Russia would just end the world over radiation. So anyway, yeah, like I said, with all the blue team combined, this is enough to overthrow Russia. Eventually, the blue team cuts off southern Russia from Russia. They push down and capture all these areas, and we have forces pushing up into Russia. Now, with a weakened Russian government, logistics, and supply running low for the country, we do see that spearhead thing that I was talking about earlier start to take place. Forces push up and cut off North Russia from the rest of Russia. Looking at this, it's kind of weird because they're really rounded. The thing I used, rounded brush, obviously. So obviously don't think that they're this round in real life or this were to happen. This is just, it looks kind of weird. But yeah, we see a lot of these spearheads poking out. And most notably, we have these two spearheads, which are pushing up towards Moscow. Speaking of said city, we have those two spearheads eventually meeting at the gates of Moscow. And I've done the Battle of Moscow 2 times already. So if you want to see a more in-depth invasion, you can go watch my other videos. I'm not sure what they are at the top of my head, but you should be watching my videos anyway. Anyway, Moscow is captured. And with this, we're left with a Russia that looks something like this. So this was the modern warfare I was talking about. I know spearheads and encirclements were a thing of World War II as well, but modernized, they are a lot more effective and proficient. So assuming that the US is able to pull us off, we see these encirclements and spearheads all throughout Russia. So assuming that these encircled areas are all captured, eventually we would have the ceding of northern Russia. And honestly, as the Russian troops are losing morale in Ukraine right now, imagine how they would feel in this scenario. Eventually, we have the Russian government either being overthrown or finally surrendering. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this video. So taking a look at this peace treaty here, we have a pretty passive peace treaty in my opinion compared to what I usually do. So let's just go ahead and start over in Russia, which has the most obvious kind of worst thing that could have happened to them. And that is Russia just being divided up into 6 different republics. I misspoke there. Maybe not republics. Maybe kind of like how Germany was treated in World War II afterwards. Maybe they're divided up into 4 different areas controlled by different countries. But for now, Russia is just divided. We have Iran becoming Iraq and being a puppet of the United States. Ukraine is fully independent again. We have them getting back Crimea and some lands out of Belarus and Russia. Poland gets pre-World War II lands back, so this little panhandle thing they had going up towards Latvia, that is no longer in existence. I don't know if it went up that far or not. It's either something like that, I don't know, but the old Polish borders were pretty cool. They were like over here like that. Speaking of Belarus, they get a new government. And then of course we have Japan getting back their older lands, so we have all these islands and then this large island. Which I'm the worst at remembering things. I'm also the worst at pronouncing and spelling. So if you ever see me just saying Northern Russia, Southern Russia, it's because I forgot the name or because I don't know. Either or. But yeah, this is now Japan. And yeah, so that's going to do it for my, I guess, newer Russia versus United States video. This is a more modern video than my older video. I already stated why I redid it in the beginning. And I guess this is more accurate, if you will. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Like I said in the beginning, subscribing to the channel lets me know what I should do, what I should post, all that kind of stuff. So If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it. If you think I should do more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.